So, Soviet takeaways, really. I suppose, and it said so in the brief, they've changed tact and they are trying the woods. Did the woods work out for them? Well, they at least have some people alive. First company has 3 men from the entire company left. So that's not been great for sticking to the roads. But in the process of taking the woodland, they've not had a great time. So if we look at Free Company, and this is literally the company commander here, we have 3 vehicles that just look like they bogged travelling through woodland. Not even anything to do with all this cratering that we tried to create. Purely based on woodland tracks and moving along that way. Looks like 2 Company was more luck. I can't really see any vehicles through here that have just been immobilized by the woodland. For them, there certainly is knocked out tanks by the artillery. If anything, I'm not sure it was by the artillery. I think, again, the cratering caused them to bog, immobilized them, which made them easy pickings for the anti-tank guided missiles. That's not to say that we haven't. So we've one immobilized, the actual tank company commander immobilized by this mess of artillery that was going on here. And then I suppose we've got these vehicles, which we don't know if they were taken out by artillery or by ATGMs. I'm going to guess ATGMs from helicopters. Can we spot any indications? I'm not sure. But that's what's happened to them. I think if we wheel all the way back to turn 1 and the very opening moves, I'm quite satisfied with the use of airstrikes on this key junction. So like I said back at the beginning of the video, the intention was, like we see over here, you give him a target and you say, please hit these vehicles. He missed by some distance. He did fine with gun runs, but he did not hit with that bomb. So instead of trying to get him to pick out a single vehicle and come in on his bombing run, I just said hit the junction, and he did as much. Didn't have to think about it, and twice he managed to drop useful looking bombs. That immobilization, I am guessing though, is not somebody who was in that crater. I think they've driven into it and got stuck in the mud or cratering. Artillery, that will have done nothing because no one went that way. Likewise, this artillery won't have had any effect during the battle. I think that the mortars and artillery use on the edge of the woods and on the edge of the hill here, they were useful. What other lessons can we take away? We've already talked about guided missiles and what works and what doesn't work for them. I don't think we really talked much about the tanks, other than at the very start, and you saw some of that where tanks firing on here, even at close range in hold down positions, still were bouncing shots even at that close range. So that was a thing that you have to deal with. And I suppose the infantry, this was the first mission that I got a proper look at how the infantry works in this game, and the first time I actually got to see, a bit like 11 platoon here, 10 platoon with their initial ambush, what they can do and what they can't do. So I had been under the impression that this was going to be a completely tank focused battle, and in fair play to them, 11 platoon managed to knock out T-64 and an anti-aircraft gun. Another anti-aircraft gun. Who else got one? So they pretty much took that on. And then the infantry back here, when they were firing on the other side, we've got another T-64 taken out by them. And likewise for the engineers, so they're smaller sections and they are not infantry. They only have self-loading rifles. I keep mispronouncing that. But they have taken out 1, 3... Who else? So 3 BMPs. This section on its own has taken out 2 T-64s. And the third one, I believe, was handled from the back road by one of the strikers. That isn't a striker. Where's the strikers? So here's the one we lost. That took out 2. Where's his pal? Not going to find it, I don't think. I have been calling them strikers all game in their swing fires. Oh, for goodness sake. Okay. Well, I will pass over to myself and cover one last thing, and then I will leave the video there. Now, lessons at the end. I think the first one to look at is this a fair post-battle analysis? Was this a master plan? I would probably say no. In quite a few cases, I had to scramble things around to plug holes and fix mistakes. And I think in a game against a human opponent, there was a good chance that they might have been able to run straight through me if they could figure out that I had shifted all of my anti-tank assets over to the left in that panic with the 3 tanks. Did the infantry perform better than expected? I think a little bit. So we got to see a couple of cases where their strengths against unsupported tanks at close range, where they had concealment, they could knock out tanks with cheap shoulder-fired weapons and knock out tanks. So in some respects, it's always this funny, I think it's almost like a contextual rock, paper, scissors. There are times when I am terrified of going up against tanks with infantry, and you find, well, actually they fare quite well. And likewise, when I have my tanks, I can sometimes be fearful of pushing tanks into areas where I think there is going to be shoulder-fired weapons or anti-tank guided missiles. I've seen that as well in the final Blitzkrieg campaign. So you have your armour and there's these little pockets of Panzerfaust and things like that your force should overwhelm the whole thing, but there's this grinding frustration where you keep getting hit by anti-tank infantry, little infantry units. So against tanks, there can be some surprises. Against infantry, the British infantry struggled to suppress. Do I care about this? Probably not. I think that comes back round to this lesson that we have in symmetry. Do you need to have infantry take on infantry or tanks take on tanks? No. It is that rock, paper, scissors where infantry can beat tanks, mortars can beat infantry, ATGMs can beat, everything can beat everything given the right opportunity. And so it is always about the context of what's going on. You can get the jump on somebody and destroy their tanks, but then we also saw my reinforcement tanks broke up that infantry attack. They were in good positions to actually tackle that and make it no concern at all. The infantry, or the engineers in that case, didn't have to really get involved. They could pull back and let the mortars and tanks handle it. Was it as scary to watch back knowing the outcome? No. I think the fog of war at the time and the uncertainty made a lot of those desperate pushes by the Soviets seem a lot more scarier in the moment playing the game. Watching it back, I kind of wonder if it was actually all it was all it was stoked up to be. Was it actually that scary a mission? At the end, no, but looking at the context, we just took on a battalion of tanks and fared pretty well. But that could be a fairly terrifying objective. So, thoughts on the Brits in British Army on the Rhine? Well, I think I could summarise it with the title from one of these books I picked up around the subject, and I would probably say they're never ready. So, if you look at the World War II scenarios we're playing, it always seems to be, everything always seems to be a little bit behind. So, World War II, all the scenarios we've been playing through at the moment, we've wished we've had better armour. We've wished we've had any form of transport to keep up with the tanks. You know, half tracks or kangaroo APCs, anything would be useful. Because they are constantly slowing our movement, walking about on foot. By the Cold War, we have our APCs, but again, these are battle taxis, and the Soviets now have BMPs with guns and ATGMs, so again, we're a bit behind. World War II, we struggle for firepower in the infantry, so we have our Enfields and our Brens. By the Cold War, our sections are smaller, but they have a healthy punch to them, so we have semi-automatic rifles, GPMGs, anti-tank weapons in every single section. GPMG, that's giving us the suppression we really missed in the World War II titles, where you've got Brens going up against MG42s. But the battle rifles, they struggle at close range, so when you're doing section attacks, closing with the enemy pockets, even though you manage to suppress and close with them, the closer you get, the more difficult it gets, because there's automatic fire coming back from assault rifles. In World War II, our tanks struggle to knock out German armour, and our protection is pathetic, so things pretty much go up in one hit. We also have this strange older concept of the infantry tank and the cruiser, and in the scenarios, we never seem to have the right tank for the scenario in their role. So you'll have an infantry tank trying to do a manoeuvre type warfare, or you'll have a cruiser tank when you really need infantry support tanks. By the Cold War, this has gone out the window, and we now have a proper main battle tank that's evening the playing field, but the T-64 still worryingly bounces our fire. So again, we're still playing a bit like the World War II, where we need to flank them. We have fewer tanks to play with, and they are slow. So on the larger maps, you can feel the lethargy as they're trying to prepare them to counter-attack or get in the right position. They are slow. I think overall they are a good force. They're certainly more professional than the wartime mob. And with enough reading, you can kind of see the inspiration and lessons they've taken from the war. And back on the campaign, I think it's been far more fun playing this hypothetical set of Cold War British battles than I found the World War II titles. I have this begrudging love for playing as the Brits. It's probably national pride, but playing through Normandy and the Reichswald, they are certainly not fun. You are getting this grinding struggle. So I just wanted to wrap up the video by looking back at the campaign, a bit of where we've come from and what the Soviets were trying to do, because I think it's really, really nice to see the thought and effort that was put in by the campaign designer to look at what would happen on day one of this war. So this is where we were fighting on this particular scenario, but if we look eastward, we can see the battlefield that we have fought the campaign over to this point. In the distance, you can just about make up on the horizon, this is the Oderwald. So this sort of separates the campaign into two parts. Last 4 missions have been fought on this side of the Oderwald. And when we look on the big map, we can see the first 3 missions of the day are fought on the other side. Task Force Bravo is falling back westward towards Salzgitter, and we kept mentioning Task Force Alpha up in Wolfenbüttel. I mainly wanted to raise this because I spotted this in the teaser information that was coming out for Flashpoint campaigns, and then I went and bought it. So we now, in our next video, we're going to have a little play of Task Force Alpha. It's a different era, so it's set in 1989, but we're going to be up there playing on a bigger scale in a different turn cycle. So the campaign covers a day in multiple hour-long battles. Flashpoint campaigns covers a day across kilometers instead of single-hour battles. So a battle in Flashpoint campaigns is a campaign in combat mission. But I'll catch you in the next one. So look forward to that.